Hey, this is a list of my top 10 most anticipated releases coming out at GenCon 2016, which is right around the corner. Let me first off say a huge thanks to Eric Martin over at BGG News for putting together a list of like 350 different games that are going to be demoed and come out and all that stuff. At GenCon, it's a super helpful resource, and I got most of my information from that list. Before I get started, a little bit about the criteria, kind of what it takes to make this list and the things that I'm judging these things on, so that you have a better understanding of why I picked what I did. First off, it needed to be an official GenCon release. So this means that basically they told Eric Martin over at BGG that this was an official release. A few of these games have already become available, but they're not like officially out yet, even though a game like Sushi Go Party or something like that you could already buy. And a few of them aren't particularly available, but they aren't officially a like GenCon release, like Dead of Winter: The Long Night, which was officially an Origins release. So those games that were not officially released are not on the list, and games that are official releases, even if they've already come out, can be on the list. They have to be available for sale, so there's a couple games that are being demoed that I'm really interested in, like Gloomhaven, Colony, things like that, but those aren't on the list if they're not for sale. They can't be a reprint, so a game like Medici that has a new cool reprint coming out can't be on the list, and there are no expansions on the list. But aside from that, everything's fair game, so these are my most anticipated games. There is a geek list in the link below, so if you're interested in finding out more information on any of these games, go ahead and click that geek list, and they're all there, along with 20 more that aren't in my top 10, but that I was interested in. So if you're interested in kind of seeing other games that I was interested in, definitely go check that out and give it a thumb while you're there on BGG if you're into that kind of thing. Okay, so without further ado, these are my most anticipated games coming out at GenCon 2016. Up first is The Networks by Gil Hova. I got a chance to play this game at Origins this year, and I really enjoyed it. It has a really good sense of humor, which is kind of refreshing in a Euro game, that it's kind of inherently funny, and a lot of the humor comes from the players, kind of how you're matching up different cards. It's a simple-ish drafting game where you're drafting television programs and trying to match those up with stars that you've drafted and trying to match those up with advertisements that you've drafted in order to kind of have the most profitable primetime seasons of television. So it's an interesting game. It's a funny game. I really enjoyed it. I definitely think you should check it out. Number 9 is Junk Art. This is by Jay Cormier and Sinfun Lim. I also got a chance to play this at Origins. This is a dexterity stacking game where there's a couple of different, you play through 3 rounds, and each round you draw different cards. I think there's 12 possible different games you play, like mini games, where you're stacking up these weird, awkwardly shaped different pieces of wood in different ways. Sometimes everybody's stacking on the same big thing. Sometimes it's a speed game where you have to like quickly find it and stack it. Sometimes you're just building on your individual one. So there's a lot of variety in the game. I wasn't expecting to really like the game that much. I had seen previews of it and I went, okay, it's a dexterity stacking game. But it turned out I really, really liked it, and I bought a copy at Origins. I liked it so much. So definitely check that out if you're at all interested in dexterity games. Number 8 is Via Nebula by Martin Wallace. This is one of 2 Martin Wallace games that's going to be released at GenCon this year. I'm a big fan of his, so I was very excited about this. The other one is Hit Z Road, which very narrowly missed making my top 10, but I kind of figured I should only put one Martin Wallace game in my top 10. Of the 2, and certainly in general compared to other Martin Wallace games, Via Nebula is a much simpler design, much more approachable. It seems like a pretty straightforward pick up and deliver game, but it's got some interesting mechanics where you sort of have to work together at the beginning of the game in order to like clear out routes, but then at the end of the game you're competing against each other completely. It's got extremely good artwork, so I'm definitely excited about a lighter, more approachable Martin Wallace game. Number 7 is Tyrants of the Underdark from Gale Force 9. This is obviously a Dungeons & Dragons game that takes place in the Underdark. It combines area control and deck building mechanics where you all are drow trying to take over the Underdark using area control and deck building. I really, really wanted to play this at Origins, but I didn't get a chance to. The table was always full, but it seemed like people were really, really enjoying it. And I absolutely love Lords of Waterdeep, the other sort of Dungeons & Dragons board game, Euro game implementation that came out a couple of years ago. So I have really high hopes for this one. Number 6 is The Castles of Burgundy, the card game by Stefan Feld. Castles of Burgundy is one of my favorite games, if not my favorite game, so obviously I'm going to be really excited about this. I've heard really good things about it from a lot of people that have played it, and people have said it kind of streamlines the Castle of Burgundy experience, but it still feels very much the same. So I'm definitely very excited about that. I know that this won't be this high on most people's lists because they probably don't like Castle of Burgundy as much as I do. But as far as card implementations go, I've heard this is a very, very good one. Number 5 is Mystic Vale by John D. Clare. This is a really interesting deck building game that uses this kind of innovative idea of like the plastic transparent cards in order to craft your deck to your very specifications, where basically it's a deck building game, but instead of adding cards to your deck, you always have the same number of cards, but you have these clear cards that only like overlay 1/3 of your card that you then slip into a sleeve to change what that card does. So you're going to wind up, most of your cards, you'll have 3 different kind of cards stacked on top of each other in order to make that. So you're really like making your cards more efficient and more powerful and kind of upgrading your cards as you go instead of upgrading your deck. I got a chance to play this one at Origins. I really, really liked it. It was a fresh feeling, yet still familiar, where it feels very much like a deck building game, but there are a ton of deck building games that have come out over the years. So this one felt new and innovative while still kind of giving you that same deck building vibe. So I liked it a whole bunch. I'm definitely excited for it. Number 4 is Scythe by Jamie Stegmaier. I imagine this is going to be number 1 or 2 on most people's lists. This is one of the most hyped games that has kind of ever come out in the hobby gaming market. For those of you who somehow don't know, Scythe is a Euro game where you're kind of in sort of a fake version of Russia at the turn of the century, but there's also like mechs and robots and stuff. So it's a really awesome, really evocative theme. I played it once and it reminded me a lot of Terra Mystica, where you're kind of optimizing your board in a bunch of different ways, and it's a lot of kind of Euro-y stuff, but there's also conflict on the board. Just really good components, awesome art, really good design, a very, very strong kind of mid-heavyweight Euro game that has, I'm sure, a ton of people are just super excited about. Number 3 is Wasteland Delivery Express from IDW. This is a pick up and deliver game, but it's set in a kind of Mad Max style post-apocalyptic universe with absolutely awesome artwork by like very comic book style artwork, really good use of color, really evocative board. It is a really good example of Euro mechanics mixed with an awesome theme, which I'm really, really into. It re-implements a game that I really like to call. It re-implements its action point allowance system and totally simplifies that, where instead of in Tikal you have like 10 possible action points and something will take 3 and something will take 5. So there's a lot of math to keep track of, where this one it's the same sort of thing, but you're actually like loading up your truck. So there are different sized tiles for different actions that you'd put in your truck. So instead of having to keep track of math, you just have to look at the thing and be like, oh, I have space for 2 more, so I can use 2 more. That's really smart. I'm super excited about this one. Number 2 is Cry Havoc from Portal Games. This is an asymmetrical area control game. It's drawn comparisons to games like Kemet, but also Blood Rage. It has really awesome minis. This has been a game that reviews have been absolutely glowing. Tom Vassell said recently that it was probably his favorite game of 2016 so far. I'm super excited about this. I really like those kind of Euro-y feeling conflict games. I know that I say Euro a lot, but obviously if you're new to my channel, by the way, I like Euro games a lot. But I'm definitely very excited about this. Again, like Blood Rage, I get to play with the awesome minis that are normally reserved for like Ameritrash players, but it seems like a kind of best of both worlds style combination where you get all the awesome stuff from Ameritrash, all the awesome theme, all the awesome components, but you have kind of Euro mechanics and it's more strategic, less luck-based type of thing. So very excited about this one. And my number 1 game coming out at GenCon 2016 is Seafall by Rob Daviau. This is coming out from Plaid Hat Games. It is another game a lot like Scythe that had just, the internet was on fire when this game got announced, and it got announced like 2 or 3 years ago. So it's been a very hyped game for a very long time. This is a legacy game from Rob Daviau, co-designer of Pandemic Legacy and designer of Risk's Legacy, the guy that came up with the idea of legacy games. It's an exploration game where you're kind of sailing around to different islands and discovering things and finding treasure and all that kind of stuff. So that seems like a really exciting way for like a legacy game to work, where you just have this big empty board when you start, and you start stickering it as you go, as you discover new lands and stuff like that. So it's very evocative, very, very cool. I'm super excited about it. It's also Rob Daviau's first Legacy game that isn't built on top of another IP and another set of mechanics with Risk and Pandemic. So I'm very interested to see what it looks like when he gets to go crazy with it and do whatever he wants. Yeah, this will be really high on a lot of people's lists. This might be number one. I could see Scythe being number one, kind of in general, but this is going to be an incredibly sought after game. So if you're interested in getting this game, and true for a lot of these games, certainly like the top 5 of these games, make sure you get to their booths early because they're only going to have limited supplies, and I'm sure this one's going to sell out. Yeah. So that is my list of my top 10 games. Hopefully it's helpful to you, and you maybe heard about a game or two that you didn't already know about that you're interested in. Make sure, again, go check out the geek list that I have listed below so you can get all the information on all the games, as well as see some of the ones that didn't make my top 10, but I'm still very excited about. Make sure you subscribe to this channel. If you're new, welcome. I do weekly board game news every single Wednesday, so you can stay up to date with what's going on in the board game industry. Also, make sure you follow me on social media. I'm at Chris Bryan Games on Twitter and Instagram, and that way you can stay up to date with all of these videos as well as everything else that's going on in the board game world. So yeah, thanks so much for tuning in, and there will be board game news, I think, tomorrow. So tune in for that as well if you're interested in that sort of stuff. All right, thanks.